Picture this scenario. You are out and about and begin to feel overwhelmed. Your heart starts racing and without warning, your breathing increases rapidly. You start to go dizzy and then you get chest pain. If that's not enough to make you feel like you're dying, your fingers and toes start to bend and curl involuntarily and they go numb. You call the ambulance with a feeling of impending doom. This is what hundreds of thousands of people across Australia and the rest of the world experience daily. And the problem is it's on the rise. A condition that starts with anxiety and then grows and grows and grows until it becomes a full-scale panic attack. Interestingly, very few fully understand what is going on and how to treat this condition and why it even occurs. In fact, when I ask people what they do for their anxiety, they invariably say, I take an antidepressant or a sedative drug like Valium. My next question is, yes, okay, but what do you actually do for anxiety? They look at me blank face at this point and say, I just told you, I take medication, or perhaps I avoid going to certain places. But is this the answer, to take a pill or avoid doing the things that we love, where we treat the symptoms but never the cause? If we understand more about ourselves and our biology, we give ourselves huge power to make monumental changes to our chemistry. In our primitive days, anxiety and panic had a great purpose. It was called the flight and fight response. Our bodies would fill with high-octane fuel called adrenaline and other stress hormones like cortisol and would prepare you to either fight the bear or to run from the bear. But now the bear has been replaced with finances, relationships, kids, multitasking, keeping up with the Joneses, and social media. Our body still senses danger but does not know what it is. Thinking back to its primitive response, it lights a fuse in our body and prepares us for the fight or the flight response. The trouble is there is nothing to fight and there is nothing to run from. In fact, we don't even move and we sit in a dark room and we rock on a chair, and this is where our world turns upside down. To add insult to injury, people who suffer with anxiety often have awful diets, regularly taking things like coffee, soft drinks and performance-enhancing drinks like Vibe and Mother, absolutely laden in sugar, and eat foods loaded with carbs. A can of Coke, for example, contains 15 teaspoons of sugar. And of course, some choose to take drugs that enhance and excite our nerve cells even more, like cocaine and amphetamines. Now we've just added the turbocharger. Some of the best treatment for anxiety is cardiovascular exercise, something that burns off the adrenaline. So going for a run or some intense exercise is gold, and steering clear of foods that stimulate us beyond an already heightened state is a no-brainer. But breathing is the power tool. We've become a nation of shallow breathers at a rate of around 15 breaths per minute. Years ago, it was 7 or 8. I wonder what's changed. So every minute of every day we're blowing off too much carbon dioxide, and this is when we get all the hallmark symptoms of anxiety. You may not even know it's anxiety, but simply call it stress. Our arteries constrict and raise our blood pressure, sometimes even constricting blood away from our brains. And then a cascade of other things happen, like stress hormones are released. And then we reduce down the production of our feel-good neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. We even set ourselves up for chronic disease and fatigue. Wow, all just in the power of the breath. Learning to breathe slowly is a skill not only to use when you feel anxious, but at all times. To begin with, start with just a few minutes each day to sit still and just breathe. And if you're struggling to find a few minutes out of your busy day, then I would say try the 2-second rule. This is something I adopted in the ambulance service and it works a treat. And it goes something like this. When I'm on my way to an emergency, and my adrenaline and cortisol levels and my stress hormones are released, I'm as anxious and as nervous as anybody else. But arriving on scene and getting out of the ambulance in this state is going to be no good to anybody. So I simply adopt the 2-second rule. In through the nose and out through the mouth. Just one moment to restore calm and capture my thoughts. It works so well in the ambulance service, I use this technique everywhere. Somebody cuts me off in the car at a roundabout. In through the nose, out through the mouth. My kids give me a hard time. In through the nose, out through the mouth. To conclude, I would say to anybody who suffers anxiety to do all the organic things first before medications. Breathe, good food, exercise, psychological support, communicate and switch off social media and front your fears instead of running away from them. It's a sad state of affairs to see the all too familiar case now where, say, a young female who is perhaps struggling with high school exams and is feeling anxious, goes to the doctor and is placed on antidepressants to numb her feelings. Sadly, this same girl learns to cope on medications and struggles to come off them, and then she becomes a young mother. And then there's a new set of stresses, so she finds herself taking antidepressants for decades, if not for the rest of her life. Some doctors even suggest to these people to stay on them forever. But surely common sense must prevail here. This was not our master plan to be medicated just to front the day, and nobody knows the long-term outcomes of these medications. We were given emotions for a reason, to feel fear and worry, and to develop tools like resilience. How can we ever experience life in its full glory if we're hell-bent on numbing what it's like to be human and not to be in touch with our own emotions? It's time we applied new strategies, understand more about ourselves and take better control and commence the journey of micromanaging ourselves well. I'm Paul Spinks from The Wake Up Call, and thanks for listening.